Many people own real estate in partnerships. Partnership interests cannot be exchanged, generally speaking. Many people want to cash out and take money off the table. There are ways that you can probably still have your cake and eat it too, but we need to delve into these. These require some special attention. And then there's the issue of the qualified use. Let's imagine that you're happy being a Minnesotan. You like the change of seasons. It's fun, right? And you're youthful and you're vigorous and you enjoy the weather and everything. And you're not yet retired. Let's say that he exchanges his South Minneapolis apartment building and buys an oceanfront condo in Sarasota. Sarasota is where old people go in Florida, right? He says to himself, I'm going to rent out that oceanfront property for a number of years, a lengthy period of time. His initial mens rea, his intent, is to hold it for investment or business purposes. His long-term intentions are somewhat indeterminate. He's got the initial qualified use intent, but long-term, he doesn't know what's going to happen. Long-term, he doesn't know what he's going to have for supper tonight, much less what he's going to do in 26 months. So there are people that are planning ahead to potentially convert to their replacement properties to some other use other than held for investment or use in a trade or business. Query, how many people think he should wait 3 months before converting that property to personal use? How many people think he should wait 18 months before converting it to personal use? How many people think 24 months? How many people say the longer the better, I'm not your tax advisor, and please sign this waiver? All right? I have had clients move into their replacement properties and get audited. One man was a widow. His wife recently passed, and he had this 5-bedroom single-family home that he and his wife had lived in, and he said to himself, I can rent out my primary home and get much more rent. I'll move into my replacement property. It made sense in his head that he'd cash flow a lot better by moving into that little rental that he had acquired in the replacement property, but he got audited because he converted to personal use like 3 months after acquiring it. After $10,000 of legal bills, he was able to extract himself with basically, he got out, but he had to pay a lot of fees to his attorney. Another lady moved into her executive home that she purchased in North Oaks, a gated community, executive native, beautiful home. She rented it for 18 months to a Medtronic executive on a real written lease at market rate, maybe even higher than market rate. She had 18 rent checks. She had a relocation agreement with the realtor. And still, she got audited. She said the process of being audited was the punishment itself. Though she won the audit, it was an unbearably stressful process for her to go through. Now there are IRS authorities, private letter rulings and other communications that seem to indicate they think 2 years is sort of the golden period of time that one should hold it before entertaining an alternative use. Knowing that 24 months or 2 12-month periods is kind of their standard, maybe we want to adapt a little bit longer standard for ourselves to stay out of the trouble. Now, it just so happens that I know you're not planning on retiring for 7 years, so you're golden. You're fine. You'll be well beyond the statute of limitations on that 1031 exchange when you convert it to personal use. So 6 years would be awesome, right? So it just depends on your risk tolerance, But there are people that are planning their future retirement homes on golf courses and oceanfront properties and ski chalets. Now let's do a little bit of a hypothetical. He moves into his Sarasota oceanfront property, and then a better property becomes available a few years later, and he says, I want to sell this property now as my principal residence. Remember, there's another code section called Section 121 that deals with the proceeds from the sale of one's principal residence. Can he take the full $500,000 if he's married, $250,000 if he's single, exclusion on a property that he 1031'd into? You used to be able to, but then they changed the rules. Now you only get a fraction of the exclusion amount based on the ratio of time he rented it out as a rental and the ratio of time that he occupied it as his domicile, his home. So let's say hypothetically that he rented it out for 2 years and then occupied it for another 3 years. In that hypothetical, he would only get 3/5 of the exclusion that anyone else would normally get. In this case, that's $300,000, which is still a loophole big enough to drive a $300,000 truck through. But the other thing that they did is they said you can't do a 1031 exchange and then do a principal residence exclusion until you wait 5 years. Once you 1031 into it, or it's been 1031 into, you got to wait 5 years before you can take a principal residence exclusion on that particular property. So they kind of slowed your roll down and they only give you a fraction of the exclusion. Now there's one more unfortunate little bit of information. The principal residence exclusion does not exclude gain from the recapture of depreciation. So let's say that your relinquished property was a fully depreciated come-and-go gas station in Decorah, Iowa, that you'd written that thing down to nothing using bonus accelerated depreciation methodologies. You had a ton of depreciation recapture. All of that comes back to haunt you now when you sell the Sarasota property because you got all that recapture in your history. So he would probably be better off not selling his principal residence. I have a mantra. If you want to attain financial enlightenment, you will meditate with me now. You ready? The mantra is defer, defer, die. Rather than selling his principal residence and not getting the full exclusion and having to recoup the depreciation, he could elect to be taken out of that condominium in a pine box once he has ceased breathing. When he dies under Section 1014, what happens to his basis in the property, in the hands of his heirs? His hypothetical daughter will receive this oceanfront condo not with the father's low basis that he carried in his hands, but a stepped up basis to the fair market value at the time of the decedent's death, generally speaking. When she attends the funeral, there will be tears flowing down her cheek. Will they be tears of joy? All right. Step up in basis is too good to be true, but it is part of our code. And so it's part of the plan. Defer, defer, defer. Never unnecessarily recognizing or triggering gains, keeping your equity compounding and building so that you can pass it to the next generation. Now, just a question for a second. If you want to make your children miserable from the grave, what do you give them as an inheritance? You give them a management-intensive, terrible property with all kinds of deferred maintenance, terrible tenants, a note coming due when interest rates have changed dramatically, make it really bad for them. Or if you want to be good to them, you could say, you know what, I'm going to just clean house, getting rid of all of my hard stuff, and I'm going to exchange into passive securities through U.S. Bank Wealth Management or some other financial services firm. I'm going to go into the DSTs. And the DSTs may ascend into the heavens of the UPREIT, at which point your kiddies will not inherit management-intensive real estate. They will inherit institutional-grade passive real estate. I once knew a man who tried to get his son involved in the real estate business, gave his son a building, and the son complained that the management of the real estate was affecting his tennis game. Do you want your children to be burdened with that? No, give them management-free, institutional-grade property. Their tennis games will be unencumbered.